You're listening to Season 14 of the Virtual Tailgate, a media bullcrap production covering college football in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I'm Andrew.
I'm David.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jared.
Be sure to join the tailgate on Facebook at Virtual Tailgate or email us at virtualtailgate@mediabullcrap.com.
All right, everyone. We're going to take a little bit of a sidetrack this week. I want to talk to you all about the holiday that we just finished last week, Thanksgiving, and a dish that may bring a little bit of contention within the household at the in-laws' house. We're going to talk about rice balls. Now, as by definition, Italian rice balls are stuffed, coated with breadcrumbs, and deep fried, staple of Sicilian cuisine, most commonly filled with a ragu, meat minced, slow cooked at a low temperature, and tomato sauce and spices, and then mozzarella, and topped with a delicious spaghetti sauce. All right, there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. The issue lies in the execution of the dish. In the household I go to, rice is cooked with just water, surrounding a meatball that is literally a meatball, rolled in plain breadcrumbs and fried, then topped with a tomato sauce that can best be described as tomato from a can on a stove to a watery tomato juice chunky consistency. Now this may not sound appetizing, and trust me, it's not, but a simple bit of proper seasoning to the rice, breadcrumbs, and meatball, cooking down the tomatoes to a more sauce-like consistency, complete with garlic and Italian seasoning, salt, and sugar, such that I don't confuse it for a soup. Again, there's nothing wrong with rice balls. They can and are a delightful dish. You just need confidence. Confidence like that of Tacovas work boots, leaving you looking confident and feeling taller, even when you're in the kitchen.
Mamma mia.
Gosh. The opinions of the previous segment are the opinions of Jeff and may not reflect the opinions of all of the Virtual Tailgate, should anyone hear them.
They reflect the opinions of at least one other person on this podcast.
Next question.
All right. Well, speaking of some confidence this week, we're gonna hand out. We're at the end of the season here, so we've got a bulk of game balls that we need to hand out this week. So we're gonna do our best to get rid of any excess inventory, so we don't have to store it over for the end of the season. Andrew, why don't you kick us off with your player of the week?
Absolutely. I have the least interesting player of the week, so we'll get it out of the way quickly. Not that it's not a great performance, but like there were some ridiculous performances this week. So Isaac Brown of Louisville had a fantastic game in his game against rival Kentucky. He had 178 yards on 26 carries and 2 touchdowns. True freshman, absolutely playing great ball for Louisville.
Yeah, speaking of true freshmen, I got Pop Watson, the quarterback from Virginia Tech, his first start ever in college football. Also got his first TDs ever. He was 24-31, 254 yards in the air for a touchdown, along with 11 carries and 48 yards and a touchdown, giving the Hokies offense new life against a UVA defense that just didn't really have much of an answer all night.
Thanks, Jared. I hate it. One thing I did not hate this week, the performance of Georgia Tech quarterback Haynes King on Friday night. The Yellow Jackets came up just short against nationally ranked in-state rival Georgia in clean, old-fashioned hate. This game almost broke records by going into an 8th overtime frame. Yellow Jackets came up just short, but along the way, Haynes King threw for 26 for 36 for 303 yards and 2 touchdowns, ran for another 110 yards and 3 scores, along the way becoming the first player in college football history to put up 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, and score 3 rushing touchdowns against a top 10 opponent. He also currently is the ACC all-time record holder for single season completion percentage. That could change with the bowl game, assuming that he opts in to play in that bowl game. But right now, King has put up a monster performance to finish a monster season and earn another Virtual Tailgate game ball.
All right, and we've got a lot of game balls sitting in the closet here that we're trying to hand out. We always keep a few extra on hand, and boy, I've got a few to hand out this week. We've got the game that ended up being an exciting game this week. We had the Miami Hurricanes traveling all the way up to Syracuse to play in the Dome, in a matchup of a Miami team that had been flailing a little bit, and a Syracuse team that had quietly had a solid season, a matchup that we thought could be exciting, and it ended up being an exciting matchup with Syracuse down early, 21-0 in this match, only to come back and win 42-38. And I could have given that game ball. It would have been easy to have given that game ball to the arm of Kyle McCord, the quarterback, the transfer quarterback at Syracuse this year, who has had a phenomenal season, threw for 380 yards, 3 TDs, no picks in that game. But he's gotten a few this season. And really, where were those balls going? Well, you couldn't even really give it to just one guy in this game. It was really a dual effort of Trevor Pena and Jackson Meeks. Trevor Pena, 6 receptions, 128 and 1 TD. Meeks complemented his performance with 7 receptions, 110 and 2 touchdowns, and what ended up being an exciting game, an overall really a 3-headed game ball effort from the Syracuse offense in a game in which they put up 42 points. I guess you could say they really outscored the Hurricanes 42 to, what would that be, 42 to 17 after getting down quick in that game, and really played a strong game. So we're gonna give away some of the extra swag as we're heading into the end of the season. I'm giving out 3 game balls this week to Kyle McCord and his partners in the comeback victory against the Miami Hurricanes, Trevor Pena and Jackson Meeks.
All right. Well, before we launch into the power rankings, it's time for a Jared PSA.
Well, if you survived this past week of holiday hell known as Thanksgiving, we now have the required weekend Christmas holiday party get-togethers, no matter if you don't know a single soul at the event. And for many of these events now, instead of bringing gifts, they want you to bring a homemade cooked dish around a theme. For tonight's PSA, the holiday party theme is an appetizer dip party. So you go ahead and make your dip, and you find out it tastes like absolute ass with no class and none of the sass. What do you do for dip now for this theme party? Simple. Go to the local grocery store and buy a pre-made dip or a jar of salsa and call it a day. Proudly let everyone know that you made this pre-packaged delicacy from scratch and have it already in your local stores for purchase. And if anyone challenges you regarding the authenticity of your dish, you question their authenticity of their marriage by spreading a holiday jeer regarding their Yule log only burns for other flaming Yule logs. Remember, holiday party themes are resolvable utilizing the purchases of goods and services, and any truth seekers regarding yourself can be quieted by questioning the size of their candy cane. The more you know.
Jeez. I don't even know if that merits that.
Personally, I feel like I know a lot less now.
Just we invite our listeners to tell us exactly which time code it is that Jared went over the line, because he did at some point. We're just not sure where.
Well, I think basically what our listeners have learned is that between the brothers Van Gelder, we hate Thanksgiving and Christmas as holidays.
I think this is true. All right. Well, moving on to the power rankings. There's not a lot that has shifted this week.
There was a lot of that going on. Oh, you said shifted.
Yes.
Okay.
We had a big debate.
I've had quite a few shifts this past few nights.
Wow. I tried to do something nice for Jared. He just keeps anyway
shifting on you.
Hey, something like that.
He's a shifty guy.
So we had a big debate before the show started about what we should do about these rankings of all these teams, and ultimately turns out that really, like, especially at the top, there's not much room for any changes here. Although there's a little bit. Does look like the sheet is not loading correctly, and I am at least paying attention enough not to just read things blindly. Coming in at number 5, we've got Duke.
I think that was a shift at me.
Yeah. We've got Duke, who did fall a spot from last week, despite beating Wake Forest. I understand why, though, because at number 4, we've got Syracuse popping into the top 5 here after their big win against Miami. None of us were willing to shift Miami or Clemson down for their losses. So they stay at number 2 and number 3, respectively, for Clemson and Miami. Clemson had a loss against rival South Carolina. Miami had a loss against Syracuse, which of course, catapulted Syracuse into that top 5 with us as well. And then finally, sitting at the top of the rankings as they've been for a while here, we've got SMU. SMU took care of business against California, BYU being the only blemish on their otherwise stellar record. SMU's first season in the ACC ends at a perfect 8-0, the only 8-0 team in the conference. The bottom of the power rankings, of course, also remains unchanged. Everybody who was at the bottom lost, and nobody who was higher up lost so badly that they broke into that bottom. So 15, 16, 17, Wake, Stanford, Florida State, as it has always been. And
The Rock says they kept you at the bottom of the barrel because you absolutely suck.
And I do see a note here for both Clemson and Miami. We get...
He clambered up, looked in, and nearly fell off in surprise.
Someone defecating.
Wait for it.
He clambered up, looked in, and nearly fell off in surprise.
Someone defecating.
And at this point, folks, before we go any further, I just have to say, this new format has been good. It's sped us up in the way that we go through our show every week, but it is a little disappointing whenever teams hang out in the dead middle. We haven't heard clips for the entire season, so just for old time's sake, guys.
Come on, you damn bird! Come and get me!
Just because.
Can I make a request in that vein, Andrew? Is it possible for us to hear Coach Cut's impression of Duke's season since they finished the year at number 5?
Does Duke play football? You damn right we play football. Yeah.
Real quick, Andrew, what type of athletes they have at Duke University?
Outstanding athletes.
Thank you, Coach.
Man, he was on that one. That was seamless.
One other thing. Former coach of Virginia Tech, how are you feeling about another 6-6 season down in Blacksburg?
That's the most ludicrous crap I've ever heard. Next question.
And Dabo, what happened this past weekend?
You get your butt beat.
Just trotting them all out because we do have another important clip to play for everyone.
Outstanding athlete. Does Duke play football? Yes, you're damn right we play football. Outstanding athletes.
And that's all media bull crap. I'm sick of it. I don't even know why we even bring up the daggum word. Next question.
All right. Well, for our new listeners here on the Virtual Tailgate, I welcome you into the pulpit known as Judge Jared's Courtroom. That's right. We just shortened this for Judge Jared for you all the listeners to understand that the reason we have court convening here today is that we're going to do some quick trials about head coaches here this past season in the ACC on whether if they deserve another chance for next year. Now, I have gone ahead and gotten the list ahead and assigned each of these 6 head coaches attorneys, and they will be stating their case in about 30-second statements explaining why or why not the coach deserves to be retained next year. Let me rephrase that. Why they should be retained next year. Do not give any information on why they should not be retained. And I know that'd be fun to do. I know that's the easiest way to go through, but your job is to protect your client, just like in any courtroom. Now, with that being said, we did have some defendants that were settled out of court, so they will not be heard from today. Those defendants include Coach Mac Brown, due to the fact they reached a settlement agreement. And in fact, Mac, do you have any information from us before we move on?
Yes, some Gatorade, man. Enjoy your day.
Will do, Coach. Thank you so much. Mario Cristobal, the head coach of Miami, you were kind of a surprise entry here, but boy, if there's one thing that earns you that is your time clock management at the end of that Syracuse game there. Justin Wilcox, the head coach of Cal, I know the Cal fans have been clamoring for you to have a day in court, but money is short at the University of Cal. And Troy Taylor, the head coach at Stanford. Now, Mr. Taylor, I understand that you just came onto the job a year or two ago, and you'll have a new AD or general manager running the ship there at Stanford, Mr. Andrew Luck. I'm sure he will do a thorough job of analyzing your credentials and wish you nothing but the best. Without further ado, let's go ahead and proceed into the courtroom here at Judge Jarrett. And the first defendant I have here listed is a Mr. Patrick Narduzzi. Mr. Narduzzi is being defended by Mr. Jeffrey Van Gelder. Mr. Van Gelder, if you proceed to the bench here and state your case for Mr. Narduzzi in about 30 seconds, if you don't mind.
Yes, Your Honor. It's actually just a blasphemy that my client, Mr. Narduzzi, is even on trial here for his performance for this season. I mean, he's 7-5 on the season, over 500. I mean, he's going to a bowl game, had a little slip down the stretch, but that's when you get into the ACC play a little bit of played a couple of tough games down the stretch. But anyways,
10 seconds left.
Oh, only 10 seconds. Only 10 seconds. Anyways, 4 seasons removed, 11-3 record, number 13 in the country, proven record, improved over his 3-9 record last year. Eli Holstein's coming back as the freshman quarterback to build off of.
Thank you, Mr. Van Gelder.
Wait, what in the?
I said at the beginning of this 30 seconds.
You know what? I don't ever recall a judge telling I want to filibuster this thing. I don't ever recall a judge telling me I only got 30 seconds.
And yet
Your
in
Honor,
the podcast.
May I contribute something? May I file a brief in Mr. Van Gelder's
Since we're already off the rails, proceed.
I was surprised that Jeff did not mention the fact that Pat Narduzzi in this very season put together a 7-game winning streak. How could you possibly fire someone who put together a 7-game winning streak in one season?
All right. Thank you both for your information and your proof of evidence here for Mr. Narduzzi. Overall, Pittsburgh's having the same issue as the other universities here around the world, NIL, lack of funding. Mr. Narduzzi's end of the season is something that should not be celebrated. Going 0-5 down the stretch is unacceptable in college football and should be every reason to get you canned pretty quick. With that being said, Mr. Narduzzi, you can return next year, but I would not get comfortable. In fact, I would give the advice of good old friend Jimbo Fisher would say, I wouldn't buy that Christmas tree next year if I were you, boy. All right, moving on. Next on my list here is Mr. David Clausen. David Clausen of Wake Forest, being defended by Mr. Andrew Marshall. Mr. Marshall, please approach the bench. And again, the same rules, 30 seconds when you start.
All right. Well, Wake beat an in-state rival in NC State. Wake beat Stanford, which means they're not the worst team in the conference. Dave Clausen took the team to the ACC championship in 2021, which for a team like Wake Forest, that is probably also cash-strapped in this NIL world,
10 seconds.
Probably means that he ought to get at least another 2 years. I mean, what else are they going to find?
Okay, Mr. Marshall, first of all, I want to say thank you for adhering to the 30-second rule. That's already going to make me feel much better that I've had control in this courtroom, which is something I really just need in my life.
Andrew, don't buy into his shift.
Order in my court. With that being said, Mr. Clausen, just because NIL is an issue does not mean it gives you a reason and an excuse of why you're failing. Other teams in college football have the same problem. They have lack of NIL resources, and yet they can put together winning seasons and bowl games. Mr. Clausen, I know what you've done for the past few years, and it should be applauded, but that does not give you an excuse of how to proceed in the future. Your ass is on ice, Mr. Clausen, and Mr. Marshall, I would advise that you tell your client at this point to have their affairs in order if they don't get the ship righted for next year. Next up, oh boy, I know this drunk when I've seen him, Mr. Brent Pry being defended by Mr. David Vaughn. Mr. Vaughn, I will go ahead and let you approach the bench. And same rules. I will give you 30 seconds to defend your client.
Your Honor, I know that the 6-6 record was not what Hokie fans wanted this season, as they came in with such high expectations, returning so many starters from a year ago. But if you look a little bit deeper at the results, the Hokies were in every single game this year. 5 of those 6 losses were by 1 score. Even the one outlier there was just a 10-point loss to a Clemson team that may well win the ACC. The Hokies are so very close. They finished the season by dominating their in-state rival. There is no world in which Brent Price should not be returning. In fact, I think his predecessor has something to say about the very fact that he was called into this courtroom in the first place.
Sorry, the predecessor was a little short named there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fawn. Although you went over the lot of 30 seconds, I hear your point. It's great that a head coach can consistently be an in-state rival. We all enjoy it, at least if you're on the winning side. With that being said, there were some very high expectations for this Virginia Tech team that Brent Pry was leading into battle. And the fact that instead of having 9 and 10 wins
to anybody else,
instead of having 9 to 10 wins and playing in the college football playoff, they're going 6-6. They're probably going to the Toyota Piston Bowl. And that's just, at the end of the day, something you should not be expecting from this type of head coach, much less this university. With that being said, Brent Pry, you get another year because of NIL, blah, 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 money.
Your Honor, may I have a moment of personal privilege?
You're white. You're good. Next up.
I want to apologize. I sincerely hope that my preseason prediction that the Hokies would go undefeated and play for a national championship, I hope that did not jinx Coach Pry and the team. Next year, I will predict that they will not even be scored upon all season long.
Next up.
Also, before we go, the sponsors of the Toyota Piss and a Bowl would like to make sure that you know that you don't say bowl twice. That middle part is in quotes.
Thank you for that correction, Mr. Marshall. Next up on our docket here is Mr. Tony Elliott of UVA, being represented by Mr. Jeffrey Van Gelder again. Mr. Van Gelder, same 30-second limit, and I'll let you begin now.
Yes, I would like to start by calling my first witness, Mr. Dabo Swinney, to defend Tony Elliott here.
All right, when I hired Tony Elliott to be the offensive coordinator who never called a play in his life.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Swinney. So this would have been a learning experience for Tony Elliott. He's improved every year. He had 1 win in conference in 2022, 2 this year, 3. So we can see the arrow is trending up with Tony Elliott, and that doesn't even begin to talk about the number of players that have to be replaced. You're going to put anybody in a bad position if you fire Tony Elliott too. There's nobody better that you can put in that position given what UVA has going on right now.
Mr. Van Gelder, I understand that this is a very fluid situation. I understand Mr. Elliott's also had to deal with quite a bit of turmoil in his first season a couple years ago with the unfortunate deaths of 3 athletes on his team. But the fact of the matter is, going 5-7 again and not having a winning record again, and a university is just begging for something relevant in football. It's not a boost of confidence, and I'll be very frank with you right now. If I was
my name's not Frank, by the way. So just
noted, Jim. Anyway, if I was the AD, but I'm not. But if I was, his ass would have been canned by now, and I'll be looking for another coach. Because any person off the street at this point can get their team to 4 wins no matter what. Even your predecessor, like, I don't know, a Mike London could do that. And you had Mike London. So it just seems at this point that the status quo now is below 500 football. And if I was a UVA football fan, I would not find that acceptable. Next up, Mr. Dave Dorn of NC State being defended by Mr. Andrew Marshall. Mr. Marshall, if you approach the bench with your and defend your client, I'll let you go ahead and take the floor.
6-6. We're going to a bowl, even though we didn't follow the Debbie Yow method, and you made us play Tennessee. Beat UNC, which is our in-state rival. He's got a winning record overall. In fact, he is the winningest coach in NC State history. I cede my time.
Well, thank you, for Mr. Marshall, for going ahead and being very succinct with your defense. With that being said, again, it seemed like to me NC State had some high hopes this year going into the season. I believe they were actually some polls had them ranked in the top 25, and kind of like Virginia Tech, same spot, 6-6. Being the conference, being your in-state rival is great, but wins mean more. And with that being said, I know Dave Doran's got a great history, but even sometimes, the end is near. And I think if you were NC State, I would seriously consider possibly the next move beyond Mr. Doran. With that being said, Doran, enjoy your next year, and I wish you nothing but the best. Last but not least, we have, last but not least indeed, I just want to make sure I'm reading his name correctly because he was nowhere close to this list last year. Okay. Florida State head coach, Mr. Mike Norvell, being defended by Mr. David Fawn. Mr. Fawn, I will give you the 30 seconds. Approach the floor and state your case.
Your Honor, in football, as in life, often you win or lose the game long before game day with the preparation you put in, the hard work, the cleverness, all the scheming and game planning. And that's exactly what's happened in this case. I won this case, not today, not based on the merits of Mr. Norvell's season or the future prospects of Florida State. I won this case a year ago when I negotiated for my client the most insane contract in college football. The reason he will not lose his job is because it would cost the Florida State Seminoles $63 million to part ways with them. To put that into perspective, if Florida State fires Mike Norvell today, they will owe him $875,000 a month until the end of 2031. Mike Norvell's not going anywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn, for stating that financially, making it very clear about the situation here. Although, Mr. Norvell, you do deserve to lose your job, it would be even more disservice to the fans and to the boosters of you losing your job and still getting paid for it. What do you think we are, the federal government? Ha, ha, ha. Speaking of that, I got to go ahead and go find another job because I'm a federal judge. This is Judge Jared saying thank you for your time. Jimbo, the bailiff, go ahead and close us up. You got it, boss.
All right, fellas, it's almost that time when we're going to be talking about ACC Championship Saturday. But before we do that, I want to look back a little bit at another even more important championship. That's right. I'm talking about the classic Tetris World Championship Series. The reason we're looking at that is because we are coming up in just a couple short weeks on the 1-year anniversary of a historic moment in the game of history. The first time ever that someone had beaten the game. Yes, that's right. And it was a 13-year-old prodigy, a young man whose name is Willis Gibson. He goes by Blue Scooty, I believe, online. And the way he did this was he got all the way to level 157, which creates a kill screen in Tetris. And with that victory, did something that people for many years had thought was impossible. Incredible young man, a prodigy to say the least. The reason I mention this today, because his championship, what we might consider a national or even a world championship, came 34 years after the release of a game. Yes, sometimes it takes a very long time to win a championship, doesn't it, Jared? Unlike some schools who have struggled to win national championships, we've got one program that is brand new to the ACC with a chance not only to compete for a conference championship, but that elusive national championship. It's possible that the SMU Mustangs 2024 football squad will win more national championships than some schools have in their entire school history in any sport. Also possible that the Clemson Tigers could get a chance to win their third national championship in the Dabo Swinney era. On Saturday in Charlotte, we've got the upstart new kids on the block, the Mustangs from Southern Methodist, taking on the blue bloods of the league, the Clemson Tigers. The game is basically a pick-em. Andrew informed us today that the line started out Clemson -1.5. It's now shifted to SMU, something like -1.5 or 2. Sounds like the money's going toward the Mustangs, but it's almost a home game for Clemson there in Charlotte. And it looks to me like the three of you are in consensus about a pick. What is it?
SMU, baby. It's all
those horses are going to be running. I mean, I what's going to slow them down now? I don't see how Clemson shocks the world. Even with Dabo saying we're going to shock the world, we're going to do this and that. I just don't see it. I just don't see the talent on this team. They lost to to South Carolina, which I think if SMU plays South Carolina, the Mustangs would beat them. So, I know SMU lost to a BYU team that has been proven now they were not maybe as good as everyone thought they were. I get it. Clemson has lost some games. They lost 3. I just don't see the talent. I just really do think SMU is a better football team, and I think it's actually not even close.
Yeah, I mean, the closest thing we have, other than just both of them playing some of the same teams in the ACC, when Clemson played ranked opponents this year, they lost to them. When SMU played ranked opponents, they beat them. Now, granted, SMU's ranked opponents were in the ACC and may not be ranked anymore, but still, Clemson has not been up for big games. It's pretty much what it comes down to. Their game against Louisville was another one of their big games, and they didn't win. So I really do think that's a problem for the Clemson Tigers. And yes, you said that it's almost a home game for Clemson, but they've lost at home. That's been a surprising thing for them this year, and this is not even that. So, yeah, I know you think that it's different, David, but
I hate it when you make good points, Andrew.
I got good points all over the place, man. You just
I don't remember
you just
the last
liked
time it's happened, but.
You just liked the Dabo clip so much from this week that you want to believe. He's made you a believer.
Y'all gonna be real disappointed.
I mean, I'm agreeing with Andrew and Jared on their pick. I can't go with Jared's. It's SMU's a better team and it's not even close, because I think that's far from a reality in this situation. The more I think about it, the more I think this game comes down to what's the response that Dabo gets out of the players after that collapse against South Carolina last week, a game in which Clemson, it was a close game, yes, but a game in which they led for the majority of the game. They had the game in control, and then they just let it slip away in that game against South Carolina. Now, at the end of the day, did not have any real impact, didn't have any impact. That didn't change whether they were going to be in the conference championship or not. Miami took care of that by crapping the bed themselves. You could say that loss may put them in a more precarious situation as far as the college football playoff goes. I guess that's worth discussion if people want to go there. But really, it's how does that team respond? And I'm just, it gives me a bit of pause where we've got two teams where we've got two of the best quarterbacks in the league, two really good defenses, two really good offenses. I think it's going to be a tight game, and for some reason I don't feel great about this pick. I do think that SMU has shown more consistency over the course of the season than Clemson has. Now, they both have had some close games, some games that they played close and pulled out the win at the end. Clemson had a couple of close ones that they ended up losing, South Carolina in the Louisville game a few weeks ago. So both teams have tripped up at places. Both teams have played down to their opponents. And also blowing out their opponents. I feel like the SMU performance, when I look at the body of work, is a little bit stronger. The way that they have more often dominated their opponents when they had the opportunity. I think Clemson has had a tendency to play down to their opponents, play closer games than they should, in games that they should win by double digits, double digits, 10, 20, 10, 20 type points, end up playing closer games than they should be. And I'm going to give the edge to SMU just on that ability to close out games. There's totally nothing that's going to tell me that that I feel great about that pick. I think this is a game that is going to be a close game. It should be a fun game to watch, but I have a little more confidence, just a smidge, in SMU and their ability to come out, dominate their opponent, and close the game out than I do the Clemson Tigers.
All right, fellas. I could give you all the arguments about why I think Clemson is going to win this game. I could tell you that the Clemson Tigers are going to be playing loose. They have less to lose in this one. They got less pressure than SMU does. I could tell you that this is going to be the beginning of the Cade Klubnik redemption tour after he struggled at the end of that ball game and the loss to South Carolina a week ago. He's ready to make things right. I could tell you that Clemson's passing game is something that SMU really hasn't seen this season. I can tell you all of that. But here's the real reason that I'm taking the Tigers to win this one, to shock the world, to make the playoff. It's because that's what would be best for the ACC. And I guess I'm the only one of us that cares about the conference that we're all supposed to love. If SMU wins this game, then it is a certainty that the ACC only gets one team into the inaugural 12-team playoff. And that's not great, guys. Not in a world where both the Big Ten and the SEC are likely to send 4 teams there. It would be far better for this league for Clemson to win a competitive game here, get the auto bid as a conference champion, and allow SMU to hang into the top 12 with a close loss to a good Clemson team so that we send 2 teams to the playoff, double our payout and our chances to advance and maybe have a surprise national champion come from the league.
I think you hold too much faith in the CFP voters for any team that is not in the Big Ten or the SEC. Clemson beats SMU. SMU is 15.
Jeez.
I'm not saying that it's right.
I will riot in the streets of wherever this committee meets if that happens.
All right. I mean, make sure to film it. Like, we want to see that.
Yeah. Andrew, David, just be careful with the whole riot thing. We kind of had that a few years ago.
Did you all know that Carla Williams from UVA is on the college playoff selection committee?
How come UVA's not in it?
Well, we don't know that they're not. Final bracket has not come out yet.
What do you think her case is? Well, those 7 losses, they were tough. They I mean, any other conference, they'd be a 12-0 team.
The quality losses, every team that beat UVA this year, those are all quality losses because they lost to teams that beat UVA.
Oh, good.
Oh, Lord. All right. That's enough of that nonsense.
All right.
So, David, back to your question though, because it was not that long ago. I mean, we were flirting with could it wasn't more than a couple weeks ago we were flirting with could the ACC squeeze 3 teams into the college football playoff before Clemson dropped their game against South Carolina, which hurt their standing, and then Miami, obviously struggling down the stretch, kicked themselves totally out of the ACC championship game. Now we're talking, is there room for 2 in here? So how do you see that? Obviously, it means that Clemson has to win this game in order to have, but what else has to happen in order for that do you think has to happen in order for that to play out? I mean, because SMU doesn't have a lot of wiggle room in those rankings if Clemson comes out in the game, correct?
That's why I think it's got to be a very close competitive matchup here. If Clemson wipes the floor with SMU, I think Andrew's scenario can play out where the Mustangs just drop too low. You know that this committee is itching to put Alabama in over SMU. And so the Mustangs need to do everything they can to make that an unpalatable decision. Here's what I think long term. The ACC, probably the writing has been on the wall for a long time that this conference, its days are numbered. But it's possible that we're going to look back on this past weekend as the final death knell to the ACC, as both Miami and Clemson lose close games and knock themselves out of obvious playoff contention. that may well be the time you look back and say that was the last kind of gasp of viability for this conference, and those teams choked it away. But having said that, boy, there are some upstart teams that are pretty good. I mean, SMU obviously is kind of the exception to all of this, but also if you look at what both Duke and Syracuse are doing with first-year head coaches, like there's a reason to think that the future of this conference is very competitive. It's just hard to imagine it getting to the level of those two power conferences.
Yeah,
Good football, it's entertaining. It's just not like semi-pro in the way that those guys are.
Well, and I think I don't know, and you all know this much better than I do. Is we kind of have talked about before that the ACC is exciting football until they have to play somebody else. I mean, because it is a conference that has shown itself to be competitive, to have teams that can rise and fall in one year to the next, which I think is exciting. I mean, within the conference to see a Duke team like, kind of build up under Cutcliffe and then, take a few steps back, and then you get Manny Diaz back there, and he's all of a sudden got them kind of building them back up again. It's exciting to see that same thing at Syracuse that has had a few steps forward and backwards. But I just don't know, and you guys know this more than I do, is it really comes down to money. I don't know where that, I mean, if other conferences, if the Big Ten and the SEC are going to just have boatloads more money to put into this than the ACC, I don't know how in the world you ever equate that, especially in the world where NIL is so much more open in front and center and permissible than it was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, you get the thing where the SEC is good because the SEC was good, and the Big Ten is good because the Big Ten was good. And like this, there was, I guess, just enough of a time where there was like a cycle of teams going undefeated one after the other that you get a cohort that looks like it's there, whereas that time from when Florida State first joined until just barely a decade ago, like they seemed like an unstoppable juggernaut for so long that it was really a one-team league here. And so it's really like, with the additional teams that we have now, with having an SMU around and a Miami, I think like if SMU could have gone undefeated this year and Miami could have turned around and go undefeated next year, and then Clemson goes undefeated the year after, and like every time somehow these teams are playing and it's for the single loss that each one gets, by 2030 the ACC is in that conversation just along with the other ones, because that's what you see happening with the teams that are with the conferences that are the big popular ones now. But there's just something like we haven't had somebody go over the top, since the Trevor Lawrence era at Clemson, and I think it's just going to. I don't know that it's ever going to get there with the way the money's moving for the other conferences.
For what it's worth, Florida State was undefeated in the regular season last year and kind of got cheated out of a 14 playoff spot. Now, of course, that totally broke the program. But like, we're not that far removed from what looked like viability as a league.
Well, but again, the problem is that when it's Florida State, it always goes back to, well, Florida State was that team that came in and dominated the league. Like they don't really ever get their same credibility the way the other teams should. Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But just for what it's worth, Florida State gets kind of, I don't know, almost gets crapped on for being good at times because they were supposed to beat everybody in the ACC all the time.
I mean, I guess it's also possible that the league just ends up like a lot of other conferences where national title aspirations really aren't the point. Teams just have fun playing each other and competing where the ACC title is the best you ever hope for. That's how most college football teams and fans live, I mean, realistically, in any given season, what are there? I mean, even with the expanded 12-team playoff, maybe there are 15 teams that realistically have any chance to compete for a national championship when the season begins. even a few teams that make the playoff don't have a real chance to win it, most likely. And so maybe we go back to the days where winning the ACC is the goal of every team in the league.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the Virtual Tailgate then. You can send your questions or comments to virtualtailgate@mediabullcrap.com.
And always remember these 3 rules. Never get less than 12 hours sleep.
Never play cards with a guy who has the same first name as a city.
Never get involved with a woman with a tattoo of a dagger on her body.
Stick to that, or else everything is a nasty rice ball.
That's ball
That's
game.
racist.
Oh, gosh.